I want to thank the Sessions Committee and Popeye in particular for calling me up and saying, would you be the chairman Friday night and introduce Rich? For those of you who are from out of town and were expecting somebody to stand up here and say, I went to the airport, I picked up Rich, we had a chat on the way here. He seems like a nice guy and I know he'll give a good AA talk. It ain't going to happen that way. This means an awful lot to me, and it means a lot to Rich, and it means a lot to AA. Okay, 10 years ago, I was writing the newsletter for the Southern Delaware Intergroup, and Steve G. was the chairman of the Intergroup. In May 2005, the Midtown Group in Washington, D.C. ran Miggy Paw 5. Miggy Paw is the Maryland group of young people in AA. And some of the young folks were saying, wouldn't it be great if we could get that in Ocean City? They formed a committee. Steve and I went to our groups, and the groups voted to underwrite the effort for young people. At this young people meeting, it was decided to put together a presentation for Miggy Paw Selection Committee. All those interested be at my office in Ocean View at 3 p.m. on a hot summer day in 2005. Rich was the only one that showed up. He and I got talking, and we decided to put together a PowerPoint to show exactly how we would run a Miggy Paw convention here in Ocean City. At that time, I was kind of down in the dumps because 3 guys I was working with decided to go on a run. My wife said to me in her typical Al-Anon fashion, can't you see it? Those guys are out and Rich is in. The presentation was given to Miggy Paw Selection Committee at the Red House in Annapolis. It was sometime in October of 2005. As the presentation was coming together, Rich asked me, this is a great presentation, but who's going to give it? I said to him, looks like he was the only one interested, and I was nothing but an advisor. He gave the presentation, Ocean City won the bid, and he was chairman of Miggy Paw 6 at the Carousel Hotel. Now here's the rest of the story. I noticed that Rich was a quick study. Everything I told him, he latched onto. I said, what do you do? He said, I was a pool sweeper. I said, you got a lot of talent you're not using. He replied, I screwed up everything in my life, drinking and drugging. At the time, his sponsor, Jim, suggested that he check with me about what he should do in his future. As Norm Alpe used to say on the West Coast many years ago, it's a game of seconds and inches. So, Rich, tell us what you were like, what happened, and what you're like now. I love you, baby. I took the time to do it.
Good evening, everybody. Popeye, thank you for including me in this great deal. It's been going on for a long time without me. Roger loves to remind me that AA will be just fine without me, but I'm not okay without you. And this is special because I probably know a quarter of the room as I look out there, and it's just, I don't know that I've ever been happier looking at so many people that have just loved me and helped me. And so thanks for having me. My name is Rich. I'm alcoholic. I was separated from alcohol on August the 30th of 2004. I didn't quit drinking. I didn't put the plug in the jug. My best thinking didn't bring me to you. Matter of fact, if any of that was true, aside from just being arrogant, it would make me non-alcoholic by definition. It would imply that I somehow had power, choice, and control over the drink. When I hear that, sometimes it makes me cringe, like my best thinking brought me to AA, like I had anything to do with it. On August the 29th, I was drunk as a monkey, and on August the 30th, I didn't have to have a drink all day. There's no step for that. There's no paragraph in our book doesn't talk about how something like that might happen. However, we all know how that happens. That's the great gift of sobriety. The miracle had happened on that day. And a couple of short weeks later, a guy said something to me that I've gotten to say to an awful lot of men. He said, there's this thing up at the convention center called sessions. If I were to give you a ticket, do you promise that you'll go to every single event? Otherwise, I'm going to give it to a guy that's going to actually use it and want to stay sober. I said, if you give me a free ticket to that thing, man, I'll go to every bit of it. And I did, and I sat out there where you folks are looking, and I looked at a guy named Jack Quarterman stand up here where I'm standing, and he said something that made me smile right off the bat, so I'll say it for the new folks. I'm going to take off my watch. Jack's no longer with us, and he'd have said the same thing. I'm going to put it here to give the newcomer hope that the meeting might end and you could get back to the boardwalk chasing women. And then a woman named Edith P. that is still with us, from Nebraska, stood up here. And what happened was I walked in here at the lowest point in my life. And when I walked out those doors, I had a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, this thing would work for me. And a little over 11 years ago, I never dreamed that I'd get the opportunity to report back to you on what you've given me. And I grew up in Baltimore, born in Rosedale, Hazelwood Avenue, McCormick Elementary School up to third grade, and at third grade my parents saved up, blue-collar folks, to take me out of that school to send me to a private school. There was a 45-minute bus ride each way to that private school. This was the event that I would hate them for the next 20 years of my life. You know what they really did? They saved up to give me a better opportunity at life than they ever had. But I don't see it that way because alcoholism is a disease of perception long before I pick up the drink. You know what I thought they did? They ripped me away from my friends, put me on that school bus, and sent me to this hoity-toity school where they made fun of me on a daily basis. They moved out to Hunt Valley before Cal Ripken lived there, and it became a nice area. We were on a little horse farm. I had morning chores to muck stalls and feed the horses and to sweet feed and all that. I'd get on that school bus and they'd call me things like farm boy and redneck and make fun of me. There was a kid on that bus, his name was Reed, and Reed's job was just to beat me up every day for something. Whether I needed it or not, he was there for me. There was a girl on the school bus that looked like some of the women here. I mean, just put together, man, and good looking. Her name was Nikki, and I didn't know how to tell Nikki that I liked Nikki. I didn't know how to ask Nikki out. I didn't know how to have any kind of I mean, I had nothing going with Nikki. And this weird thing happened. I believe I was in 6th or 7th grade, but I couldn't swear to it. And some of these older guys that I always wanted to hang with, I don't know what that was all about, but I always wanted to be with the older guys. They said, you want to skip last class and do some drinking? I'd never skipped any class. I'd never done any drinking. And out of my mouth came, you bet, like I'd been doing it all along. And they said, well, what do you drink? And I said, bourbon. And I have no idea where that came from. I wish it was true. This is how you know that I didn't know that I was going to end up in AA, because what I'm about to tell you next is so lame and embarrassing. We didn't have bourbon. What those guys had was peach schnapps. And I know, it's just so wimpy. But what I now know makes me one of you. Why I get to stand here and walk with you all shoulder to shoulder is not because of what alcohol does to me. It's because of what it does for me. Alcohol does to the human body the same thing, to those folks that are alcoholic and aren't alcoholic. You put enough alcohol in a non-alcoholic, they'll eventually get sick. It's called alcohol poison. It's a poison, it's a depressant, it's what the human body does. It expels it, they get sick like we get sick, that's it. You put enough alcohol in a non-alcoholic, you put them behind the wheel of a car enough times, they'll get a DUI, or 2 or 3. Does not make them alcoholic. That's what happens when you play the odds of drinking enough and driving a car on a road enough times. You put enough alcohol in a non-alcoholic for a long enough period of time and stop abruptly, they will shake, they will sweat, they will go through all those early stages of the delirium tremens that we did. That is the effect of alcohol on the human body. It doesn't make you alcoholic, but what makes me alcoholic is what it did for me. And it's incredible of what I was willing to put up with, of what it did to me in exchange for what it did for me. And on this day, we're drinking this peach schnapps, and as it's gone down and around, the first thing I notice is that I'm as lucky to be hanging out. You know, those guys they're lucky too to be hanging with me. I never felt like that. And, and we're just kind of equals. And I've never been equal with anybody. And I'm sitting there and I'm getting ready to get on this school bus, and the thought goes through my head about Nikki, and all of a sudden, with this magic stuff, peach schnapps in me, I somehow intuitively know how to handle this situation with Nikki that used to baffle me for years. And I get on the school bus, and I'm going to sit next to Nikki, and I start walking to the back of the school bus, and I know that I don't belong in the back of the school bus because there's a social hierarchy on the school bus where I go. I don't know if you all had this, where the older kids sit in the back, and it kind of comes up to the front, and if you're young, you go to the back of that bus, you're going to take a beating, and that's where Reed was, and I knew the beating was coming, and as I'm going back to sit next to Nikki, Reed starts, in his defense, he wasn't all the way to his feet, he starts to stand up to give me my daily beating, and as he did, I clock him with everything my little body's got in it, and Reed goes down and out. The whole school bus gets really, really quiet. I sit down next to Nikki, and I'm looking at Nikki, and Nikki's looking at me, and I'm looking at Nikki. Nikki's looking at me. And this feeling kind of, some of you guys will remember this. I mean, it was like long overdue respect. Finally, you know who I am. About time. And when we got to Nikki's bus stop, something even more magical happened. She leaned over and gave me this little kiss that maybe some of you guys will remember. It's like half on the lips and half on the cheek. I mean, it's different than the way that my mother and my aunt had ever kissed me. I felt it in my toes, And when I got off my bus stop, I go into my house, and I come from a good family. Nobody in my family drinks, no mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, any type of genetic theories of alcoholism, right on. My sponsor, Roger, he tells me he thinks I'm alcoholic because I drank too much. I've just gone with that. And if you're new and you're worried about that, please don't. Nothing could matter less than how you got here tonight in that chair that you so desperately deserve. And please don't let anybody talk you out of that seat. Because the fact that you're in that seat, it doesn't matter. I like to tell this story. An alcoholic is like a person trying to figure out why we're alcoholic. How did I get this thing? How did it happen? But it's like a guy or girl whose house is on fire. I mean, my house is burning to the ground, and everything worthwhile in life is in it, and it is burning to the ground. And the fire department's there, the big truck. They've plugged a hose into the hydrant. They've fed it across the yard. All the neighbors are there. That's you guys. You're all out front helping, feeding that hose across. You're holding the hose. But I'm up front. I control the hose. And you're all screaming at me as my house is burning down before my eyes. Please, Rich, please, shoot the hose. Shoot the hose. Put the fire out. But I go, well, wait a second. First, we need to figure out how this fire started. What could matter less than how the fire started? We have everything you need right here in Alcoholics Anonymous to put the fire out for good and all. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. When I went into that house, those good parents, morals, integrities, values, good people. I was obviously drunk for a little kid. They left me in the bathroom getting sick all night to teach me a lesson. I don't know if any of you have parents that would teach you a lesson. There was a whole lot of people in my life that were going to try to teach me a lesson. One of the defining characteristics of an alcoholic of my variety is they are to little avail. They go right past me, things that should capture my attention. You know those things that get the attention of the hard or the heavy drinker that sometimes looks like the real alcoholic, but one of my characteristics is things that should register don't. And they leave me in that bathroom to be sick all night. I sleep next to the toilet, and you know those positions we slept in with our neck all kinked up, and unhuman position. I don't ever remember waking up feeling sicker. I was grounded forever. Remember that in 6th, 7th grade. That's like life without parole later on. And you don't even know when it's going to end. I was in big, big trouble. I don't ever remember feeling sicker. Sick as a dog and grounded forever. And the next thought that goes through my head is, you ever going to do any more of that drinking? You bet. You bet. Are you kidding me? Sick as a dog and grounded forever? What a small price to pay for what I had going on that school bus with Nikki. And what I didn't know had happened is when that stuff went in me and did its thing, something inside me was inwardly rearranged. And I can't say it any better than Bill. A boomerang was set in flight. And much like a boomerang, my alcohol was going to give so much to me for so long until it would one day turn in flight and come back and nearly shred me to ribbons. And the problem was, when it made that turn and came back, it was going to happen so slowly, one drink at a time. And one drink at a time, I was going to turn over every value system, every bit of integrity, every good life lessons those wonderful people gave me. I was going to surrender each of those to alcohol, one drink at a time, so slowly I didn't know it was happening. And our book says that by the time the alcoholic me, by the time I clue in that this is happening, I've often slipped past the point of human aid. And that's what happened. And I drank as often as I could through high school. What we do in the outskirts of Baltimore County, we do cornfield drinking, went through high school. I'm from the generation where coaches buy kegs of beer. If you don't drive, everybody puts their keys in a basket. Things like, I know that doesn't happen anymore, but that was responsible coaching or parenting or something. And then we do this cornfield drinking if we didn't want to follow those rules. And you you build a fire in a cornfield and get a keg of beer. And I'm driving a CJ7 Jeep at that point, was my first car. No doors, no roof, keg of beer in the back. I got 4 or 5 buddies loaded into that thing. And we're coming around that turn on Falls Road a little bit too fast where it goes down the hill. Just about 2 miles past Falls and Shawan. And as we're coming down there, that Jeep rolls like 3 times into the field. And boom, boom, we all fly out. Everybody's busted up and banged up and, cuts and bruises, couple broken bones, but nobody's seriously injured. You know what I think? Did you see that? That was some good drunk driving right there. I mean, that was like NASCAR stuff. I mean, I rolled it 3 times, boom, we're all on our feet, we all walked away. I mean, that was good drunk driving. And, that should get somebody like my attention. I've already told you, that goes right past me. There's no humility, there's no capturing the grace of God, there's no present awareness to the moment and what's happening in it, therefore no God, right past. And I keep going as much as I can, and my parents are leaving me in jail for the weekend at this point to teach me a lesson. You know what that is? A better story on Monday. I go to that school and I have some street cred, as to what happened on the weekend. And I somehow in my mind think this makes me, cooler. I eventually get to go to college. I was a good ball player. And God gave me another thing that, it's interesting to have the sponsor right next to you. He'd be quick to tell you that it's very distinguishable from being intelligent. This gift that God gave, I could read something and for the rest of my life I could tell you what page it's on, what paragraph, and remember it. And that makes you very good at taking tests at school, the way we teach in the United States. It doesn't make you smart. It doesn't make you learn how to study. It doesn't give you any work ethic. It doesn't teach you anything about a work-reward ratio. Nothing. But I'm plowing through school, and it just seems easy. And because of that, the grades are good, and I get to go to this college. It's the University of San Diego. My college selection process looked like this. I wanted to play Division I ball. I wanted a scholarship. Well, that was my parents' rule. And I wanted to be as far as possible from my parents, those nice folks with those rules and all that integrity. And I wanted to be able to surf because growing up around here, we vacationed here every summer. My father taught me to surf before I can remember. I think, 3, 4, 5 years old. It's just been a wonderful part of my life, my whole life. So I wanted to be able to surf and be really far. And I picked the University of San Diego, and it fulfilled all of that. And when I got out there, I'd overlooked one little thing. It was a Jesuit school. I didn't know what the Jesuits were. I didn't care. We have 2-a-day soccer practices in the morning and at night. I've got these classes. I get assigned a lady. She's called an academic advisor. That might sound pretty neutral to you folks, but I don't see it that way. Her job's just to help me pick classes that maybe I'll graduate in 4 years. That's it. That's all this lady's trying to do is help me. And when I've looked back through my life, through our inventory process, there have been so many well-meaning people that all they were trying to do is steer me in the right direction, give me a little nudge or a bump down the road of life. And the way that my perception works is anyone in my life that has ever tried to help me, I think you're trying to hurt me. You're trying to tell me how to live my life. Back off. This is my life. Let me live it. And I don't know what that's about. She says, we're trying to start something here. If you want to go anywhere and do anything with your life, you're going to need something more than good grades and in soccer. There's not a big career in soccer here in the United States. That's great, you're good at that, but nobody cares. You know, and she said, we've got this idea we've had for several years. We want to start an Office of Alcohol and Drug Education here on campus, where we get a student certified as an alcohol and drug counselor. They have office hours. They help the students that are having problems with alcohol and drugs. We would like you to be the founding father of this office. We're going to get you certified. And this is going to look really good on your resume and help you get a good. And if there's anything drunks understand, it's looking good on paper. You know, I don't want to live that way, but I want to put it on the resume. So I'm in. I'm your guy. I'm the model guy. You know, and they do that. And now my day's getting really full. I got the morning practice. There's some other guys on the team. There's 4 other guys on scholarship. They're from about 20 miles away. It's Tijuana, Mexico. They're these Mexican fellas that we just become fast friends because we're the only 5 guys on scholarship. In my mind, that means we're all poor. We got to stick together. This campus is really nice. I'd also picked up on the fact, because I'm a quick study, that the guys that were getting the chicks were driving nice cars and seemed to have some dough. I had this other internal knowing about myself. I don't know where I got it from, because no woman ever told me, you know what, you're ugly, you're stupid, I don't want anything to do with it. Nobody ever said anything like that to me. But I just somehow knew that if I was going to take a woman like you out, I was going to have to do it first class, or you were going to want nothing to do with me. There's going to have to be flowers, a nice dinner. I was going to have a nice car. Otherwise, you just weren't going to want anything to do with a guy like me. And that just came from the inside, from an early, I don't know where that came from. You know, and that set me on a course much like Bill, where I was going to have to get some stuff, right? That launch into the realm of the material. And with these guys, man, these 4 guys from Mexico, we're hanging together on that team, and it turns out that each one of them has like 36 cousins that lives just across the border in Mexico. And we get this thing going with these cousins where we're bringing the green stuff that the rich kids like smoking, you know, across the border. And I'm shrink wrapping it to send back here because it was better than what you all were getting in Maryland at the time. And I didn't forget where I came from. I wanted to help you. And so I'm shrink wrapping and I'm sending that back here. I got the Jesuit classes that the lady signed me up for. I got the morning and the afternoon soccer practice. After that practice, I got to drink a lot because the worst part of my day is from 7 to 10 at night. That's when I have the office hours to counsel you pathetic people with your alcohol problem. And I'm giving out, you know, AA schedules left and right because it's obvious you need it. And by the way, if anybody needs to, you know, chill it out a little bit, come see me after office hours and we'll get you squared away back at the dorm. By my senior year, my life had changed substantially at that university. I was able to purchase my first house, cash, 423 Nautilus Street. It's the 3rd house on the right at Windansea Beach in La Jolla. For anybody that's been there, it's one of the best surf spots in the world, but I no longer surf. Because when you drink like I drink, everything must go. Every joy, every hobby, every passion. Waking up early when that wind is offshore and the surf is glassy and the dolphin are going by. Everything must go. When I drink, that's all I do. I'm driving a BMW with a number on the back. It's a convertible for any of you BMW people. The number on the back lets you know something very important about that car, that they don't sell this model in the United States. It's one of the European ones. I had to have shipped here on a boat because I'm that important. I'm dating the prettiest girl in the school, or at least you guys thought so I dated her. I still don't know if I ever liked her. But that's how I'm living my life, is to impress you. And it's about 5:30 in the morning, and boom, 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 boom. Every single door and window in that house came in, and the next thing you know, I'm on my stomach with plastic zip ties. And see, I'd switched over from the green to the white stuff because it was just a lot more money. I was drinking to live what I was doing. And there was a certain amount of peace on my stomach, hog-tied. And it was accompanied by a heck of a lot of fear as they took me off. They call it MCC, the Metropolitan Correction Center in downtown San Diego. It's their federal prison. And it's the first time I'd ever been in a federal prison. I've been going to the meetings all week and talking with you folks, and there's a lot of prison people in AA. I'm not one of them. I'm a jail guy. I specialize in the 60 to 90-day sentence. It's good to have a specialty. And, you know, I'll do 9 months, I'll do a year, you know, in county. At 18 months, you go to prison. That's too much structure for me. It's long term. I was always scared of prison. I mean, let's be honest. I am a jail guy. Now, And I got no problem doing 30 days here and there. To this point, I'd been arrested 35 times, or 34, that was 35 there. And all of them, if you pulled my NCIC, criminal history, I'd love to tell you that it would look like, it would be impressive, you know what I mean, like a tough guy or something, but it's not. It should just say drunk and stupid at the top, because everything in there, it's drunk in public, failure, my personal failure, I can't even tell you how many, failure to obey a lawful command. That's like when a police officer says, go back in the bar, sir, and you go, right, and off you go, right? Sir, please lower your voice. Right? I just don't listen, and when I'm drunk, I've never had any reports the next day of good behavior. I can tell you that. Nobody ever said, last night you were over at the Food Lion, so drunk, helping these little old ladies through the parking lot. I don't do stuff like that when I'm drunk. This turns out to be a problem. My mother was nice enough to save a copy of the San Diego Union Tribune, Los Angeles Times. Said Jesuit student, 27 kilos of cocaine was the headline. The federal sentencing guidelines, I don't know if anybody knows how the federal system works. Statistically, few of you do. And it's like the number of arrests plus the amount of cocaine, and you do that, and in my case it said 46 to 60 years. And that was alarming because I'm a jail guy, I'm not a prison guy. And 46 to 60 years, and I wasn't given the bond. There's certain people I don't get along with, to this day particularly well. I don't do well with prosecutors, police, judges. They don't understand us very well. And the judge, the prosecutor stood up and said something that was to be the first of what I call a direct hit. That's those things that get you right in the heart, that you can't postpone or evade. You can't get out of its way. And that U.S. attorney stood up and said, if Mr. Bruckner is given any bond whatsoever, he will flee to Mexico with his business partners where he will live a happy and successful life. Happy and successful life. I hadn't been happy and successful in Rosedale, hadn't been happy and successful in Hunt Valley, hadn't been happy and successful down here, hadn't been happy and successful in Pacific Beach, hadn't been happy and successful when I bought the first house in La Jolla. What are you talking about, happy and successful in Mexico? Those people are looking to kill me. I just lost a lot of their money. Judges, how they are. You all have been in front of them. They believe stuff like that. And I wasn't given any bond. And by this point in my life, nobody would have put any up anyway. The type of alcoholic I am, the more you love me, the more I suck you dry. God help you if you love or care about me at all. And the more you do, the more you're going to get it. I will turn every hair on your head gray. Mom, I will leave you up at night. Aunts, uncles, my 3 goddaughters and my aunts and uncles' kids, I promise I'm going to be there every Christmas with gifts. What do you want for Christmas this year? Those little girls sit in my lap and tell me in one more year I failed to show up. And it gets to the point where you just got to be done with a guy like me. And then I have the arrogance to walk through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous and say, leave me alone, I'm only hurting myself. The biggest lie, we all tell. I'm only hurting myself. What I now know is that this wonderful power that we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've got a very short time to tell you guys to report back on the gift that you've given me. This thing called awakening. Alive, present to the moment, to get to be right here with you all this week, to get to be with so many of my wonderful friends and my wife. And I love that this conference, includes our wives and families and allows us to all be together. I've had, just the time of my life this week hanging with all you. There's so many special people in my life as I look around the room. I'm going to refer to this power as God. I hope that word doesn't separate this room at all. It's the best we've got. They made the mistake of calling on me when I was new in an 11th step meeting, which don't ever call on a newcomer in an 11th step meeting, and somehow it was the topic of what do you think, Rich, about this higher power thing? And, nothing. I haven't done the steps yet. Should have been the answer, but we don't have the ability to say that. So I start in. And I say, what, I don't know anything about God. I don't think that there's a God, really, but let me tell you this. I am a surfer, and I know what waves are. Waves are energy that travel thousands of miles across the ocean, and if the swell direction is from exactly the right direction, a wave breaks when it hits half the depth of the size of the wave. So an 8-foot wave will break when it hits 4 feet of water, a sandbar, a coral reef, anything that makes that wave break. And to make the wave stand up properly, to create those tubes that you see, the wind has to, on the East Coast, come from the west and go offshore. And it has to happen. That happens when the water temperature is warmer than the land temperature in the morning. And that's what makes the wind go in that direction. So if that energy has traveled in the proper direction, thousands of miles across the ocean, the wind is in the right direction, and it happens to hit the reef at just the right depth, we get a good day surfing. And I am willing to concede that I can't make all that happen. A guy in the meeting looked at me like shaking his head. He goes, "Phew, you just took up 20 minutes of our meeting. We've got this word God. It's got 3 letters. It's real quick. And if you just say that, we'll know you mean the thing that makes the waves." So ever since then, I'm just going to say God in the interest of time. And it's got 3 letters. It's short. And I mean the thing that makes the waves. And I also mean whatever pops into your head. Sometimes language separates us. It's silly that it does. But I hope it doesn't tonight. I hope that it brings us together. And when I use that word, I hope whatever pops in your head, you know that's what I'm talking about. And in that penitentiary, as confined as I have ever been, I started to get free because God surrounded me with enough guys like me for me to see me for the first time, and that was substantial in my life. And what I mean by that is I told stories my whole life that I'm delusional. That's what the book tells me. Doesn't say anything about denial. It talks about delusion. And these guys say things to me that I've said my whole life. It was like having the world's biggest mirror. And they said things like, "Hey, Rich," I'd say, "What are you in here for?" And they'd say, "I'm in here because of my mechanic. If my mechanic had fixed my taillight right, that cop would have never pulled me over. And if that cop hadn't pulled me over, he'd have never smelled the alcohol on my breath. And if he'd have never smelled the alcohol on my breath, he wouldn't have pulled me out of the car for those DUI tests and then searched the trunk incident to arrest where he found all the dope. So you could see the reason I'm in here is because of my mechanic. And if I get out and I ever find that mechanic, we're going to get this straightened out." And he believes that. Just as I had believed things like that my whole life. One guy was in there because of his wife. And if she hadn't talked to him and yelled at him and done the things she wouldn't have had to stab her. It was very clear to him. It was, and if you'd have hooked him up, to a lie detector, he'd have passed it. And that's how I was my whole life, right? That's delusion, is I believed a lie. I actually think that it's true. The next thing that was just this awakening in me was I realized for the first time in my life I was where I was because of who I was. And I was who I was because of how I live. I'm going to repeat that because that is a huge deal in my life. You all are very big on that in AA, by the way. I was where I was because of who I was. I was who I was because of how I live. Another way of saying that is that my tombstone is not going to say, "Here lies Rich Bruckner, he meant well." Right? I always meant well. I never once left my house on a Friday night taking that pregame shower we do before we go out, with that optimism of the night. In that hot shower, the steam's going, I got the cold beer in the shower, the sweat's coming down. I'm throwing that thing back, man. I get out of there, put on a nice silk shirt because we're going out drinking that night. I'm going to find one of you ladies, spray on a little of that girl sauce, and you say, Eddie says, "Hey, Rich, what are you up to tonight?" "Hey, you know what I'm up to tonight, Eddie? Tonight's the night that I'm going to shame my mother to where she can't look me in the eye without her head dropping to the ground for about the next decade. You got any plans tonight, Eddie?" I never went out on a Friday night with those intentions, but that is what happened. "Howard, what are you up to tonight?" "Well, Howard, I'm glad you asked me. Let me tell you what I'm up to tonight. Tonight's the night that I'm going to go out and I'm going to humiliate my only little sister. She's 3 years younger than me, and it's going to be so bad that she doesn't speak a single word to me for 6.5 years. You got any plans for the evening?" Never meant for it to happen, but that is what happened. Y'all in Alcoholics Anonymous care very little about what I think. I'd proven that by getting here. All of those degrees, all that alcohol counts. Founding father of the Office of Alcohol and Drug Education. There's no chapter in our book called Into Knowing. I know so much about alcoholism while I'm dying of it that it was disturbing. I'll tell you all about the Jelinek curve and how we process alcohol and convert it into a simple sugar, blah, blah, blah. There's no chapter about understanding it. There's no chapter about thinking. Nobody said, hey, do you like the way our steps are numbered? Do you have any improvements? You've never asked me any of that. You care very much about what I do. You're just always watching my feet. All of these guys that are, wearing ties and hanging out and are here tonight are the guys that are a part of our sponsorship family. And this is, while it's neat for them and probably fun and they're here rooting me on and the part of my life and good friends, they could care less that I'm doing this. They're waiting to see if I show up Tuesday night to be the treasurer at my home group, to see if I make the coffee, to see if I'm where I say I'm going to be, to see if I'm at the table on Monday night to read the book with them. Or did I get busy? Y'all care very much about my feet. And I was in that institution for a little bit over 9 months awaiting trial, and it turned out that 2 days before the trial they discovered that the DEA agents had some problems of honesty of their own on an affidavit to get a search warrant, and it was determined the search warrant was illegal based on this affidavit. All the evidence, everything had to be suppressed. The case was thrown out. And I'd love to tell you I walked out of that penitentiary a free man, but anybody that's ever been in a jail knows you're not free when you get out. You know what you are? Thirsty. Thirsty. And I couldn't stay where I was at San Diego for a whole lot of reasons, and I couldn't come back home because I just shamed my family too bad too many times. And I started bouncing around from different little towns, Sun Valley, Idaho, to a little town called Ketchum, and I'd stay there until I get in trouble. And I'm a midnight mover, when the warrants come. That's the other thing. When there's a warrant, I run. Cowards run. That's what I do. I want you to think I'm some kind of tough guy gangster. In the game. And the fact of the matter is, tough guys walk through the fire. Cowards run. Whenever I hear of a warrant, I run. I make the original problem 10 times worse. And I go from Ketchum over to a town called Boulder, Colorado. Boulder to Steamboat. Steamboat, I end up I'm a midnight mover too, by the way. When it's time to go, it's time to go. You'll know how that goes. You gather up a bag and you get out because they're coming. If I had every television that I've left behind, I'd have a Best Buy store out here on Coastal Highway. I'd leave stuff. And I eventually, after bouncing around, by the way, here's how delusional I am. If I run into one of you women that look like you do, let's say we're in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, sitting at the $1 Million Cowboy Bar, and I buy you a drink with some money that's probably not mine. You say, so what's your story, Rich? And I look at you and say, traveling, babe, traveling. Like I'm some type of romantic sojourner across our great nation, And I'm like running. And I eventually end up, we're all big shot, tough guy, wannabe drug dealers, wind up when the federal government seizes every bank account, car, house, back on my mom's couch in Ocean City, Maryland. And if you're laughing or smiling or nodding, which I'm looking at, there's a lot of faces smiling and nodding. You might be a mom's couch person. And that's cool. It's a great place to start this journey. There's only one rule at mom's house. You know that? I couldn't even believe she took me back. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, as long as... Oh, we got a lot of mom's couch people. As long as you don't drink. You know the rule. And I was never, ever, ever, ever going to drink again, and I meant it with every fiber of my being, man. I couldn't even believe that woman took me back into her home again. And I was never going to drink. And I start coming to the meetings that I've been sending you all forever, and I'm going to meetings. I'm talking 7:30, noon, night, People are slapping me on the back saying, kid, put the plug in the jug, you're doing great. Just don't drink between meetings. What we do is we just don't drink. Like, no kidding. No kidding. Is that all there is to it? I never thought of that. In 15 years of alcohol kicking my butt. Guess what? If that was the secret, I'd be doing something else tonight. But I think they were giving me the best of what they got. That's the double-edged sword of this thing. You can't give away what you don't have, right? We fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and our fellow men. If we haven't taken the time to do that, we pass on a bumper sticker slogan, and that's about all we got. And unfortunately, I was dying in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's people in AA. I last at my mother's house about 3.5 weeks before I eventually am drinking, coming in and out of the meetings. I do a residential burglary on my mom at about 3 o'clock in the morning. She'd already had to get a restraining order. I wasn't supposed to be 100 yards of her or her house. But, I'm not going to rob you. You look like you might hurt me. Tough guys rob mom. So with the restraining order, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I break into my mom's house. She sleeps upstairs with her little purse. She's a retired school teacher underneath her bed with her door dead bolted and a restraining order. So that should tell you about the previous nature of our relationship. I'm doing my best commando crawl on my stomach across that bedroom floor, and I'm reaching for her purse underneath the bed. And she wakes up and her eyes come off that bed, and she catches me dead square in the eye and said, "Rich, take it. Would you just take it?" And I surf with some of the guys in this room. I've been stabbed in Panama. I got a scar on my stomach. I got a little M branded on my back that those guys in Mexico wanted me to remember who I always work for and who owns me. You could beat me up. You can lock me up. You could shoot, but don't you give up on me, Mom. When Mom gives up, that was one of those direct hits. Take it, Rich. Just take it. I knew I'd pushed her past a place that I had never previously done. And moms don't give up on you. It turns out that she didn't give up. She just had to let go. Because the more you love me, the more I suck you dry. And I stayed drunk on that, and I'm coming in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, coming in and out, because meeting makers make it. I'd been to the doctor. I'd had my liver biopsied at 29 years old. That should have been a hint. It wasn't. Went right past. Told me not to take any Tylenol, that would kill me. There's certain people in AA that bug me and certain meetings that bug me, and I don't like to go anywhere where I see the big book up front or they're talking about steps. I like to go to those ones called open discussion. You know about those? You go in, they say, does anybody have a topic? And somebody says, yeah, my cat died. And well, they talk for 20 minutes, and then they call on Franny, and Franny, turns out she was an owner of a little Yorkshire Terrier that was very, they go on and on. You know what happens? An hour goes by. I walk out of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous dying of the fatal progressive disease of alcoholism. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I know no more about recovering from that disease the second I walk out of that meeting than the second I walked in. Maybe I'm a better pet owner. My personal favorite was when you walk into one of those meetings and they say you got a topic and somebody raises his hand and, it's, yes, sir, what's the topic tonight? And he says, she left me again. She left me again. And, he shares about this, the most recent wife or woman that left. And tragic tale of woe and heartbreak. And, then calls on his buddy, who he knows a lot about relationships. He shares, he's on his fifth wife. And they're going to enlighten us about relationships for 5-10 minutes, and then calls on Margaret. Margaret's fascinating. She's been married, divorced, married, divorced, married, divorced for the same guy for 3 times. But she knows a lot that's going to help. And you know what happens? I leave a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, dying of the fatal progressive disease of alcoholism, knowing no more about recovery from that disease than the second I walked in the meeting. And yet there's people that bother being Alcoholics Anonymous more than anybody. There's this woman named Janine. Some of you remember her. She's moved to North Carolina, Florida. And Janine, she always had the book with her. She was about 18 years sober when I met her. Always had the book Alcohol. Haven't you read it yet? You're 18 years sober. Why do you have it with you? Come on, read it already. I just didn't get it. Every meeting had the book with her. Had that stupid smile on her face, you all got it. That look in your eye. Like you're sober on purpose and happy about it. It's a weird state of being. When I'm not drinking, I'm not happy. That's one of the reasons I thought I might not be alcoholic. You people were talking about not drinking and happy at the same time, right in the same sentence. And Janine really upset me. She didn't call her sponsees. She didn't call them pigeons like the old timers. She called them duckies. That little reflux you just felt was your dinner. It's nauseating. And as she'd come in, when she'd come to the meeting, she'd come in and she'd sit down, and there'd be like 6 of them following her in, and she'd sit down and dish, 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 dish. They get in a little line. And then at the end of our meetings, at some of them, they give out these chips for like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, leading up to a year. You get like 10 seconds to say how you did it, right? And it's my favorite part of the meeting, right? I'm in the back dying of alcoholism, sitting where you're supposed to sit when you're new and angry, in the back, arms crossed, hat down. I didn't even know you don't wear hats in a building or a church back then. I got like a hat down, and and then they go, does anybody have 30 days? And one of these duckies comes up. Hi, my name's Melissa. I have 30 days. I just started my 4th step and 5th step. Janine's my sponsor. I think I'm getting free. And she goes, and you know what I'm thinking in the back of that room? I'm thinking I'm going to knock her teeth right down her throat. I'm going to knock the smile off her face. I'm going to knock it down her throat. You know, does anybody have 60 days? Hi, I'm Becca. Becca, I've got 60 days. Janine's my sponsor. I'm on the 9th step. I'm making my amends. I think my family's starting to take me in. Yeah. I'm in the back thinking I'm going to knock the smile right off her face. And then we get to my favorite part of the meeting. Does anybody have 24 hours or a desire to start over? And I do the longest walk in Alcoholics Anonymous one more time to pick up my 200th 24-hour chip. I mean, I could string those things across the room. And at 36 days, I made it to 36 days one time without so much as a single drink or anything else in my system. And all I wanted to do was to be able to sleep. And I knew at 36 days I could not live on this earth one more day without a drink. And I knew I couldn't do what you folks were doing. I couldn't take so much as one more drink, and I couldn't live sober. That's the way it looked to me. And it was mostly that 4 steps. See, I don't have a sponsor yet. I read the steps, and I interpret them myself, and I decide what I'm doing. I'm the guy, I go to a step study, you read the step. I think I did it by, like, hearing it read, you know. I, like, get in a book discussion, and I think I've, like, done the big, you know. I'm nuts. And I'm looking at the stuff, and back time and time again, we got all these definitions in AA, right, that we make up, alcoholic definitions. It seems like we like making stuff up. And I hear about insanity, right, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. How about this one? Being a member of a 12-step fellowship and not taking the 12 steps. I mean, that's nuts. Who would do that? That's me, you know. I'm under the delusion that somehow I'm just, by hanging out with you guys, it's going to, like, osmosis its way into me or something. And, oh, gosh. At 36 days, the 4th step, what happens is I look at that, and here's what I think. I'm not writing anything down. You guys seem to be excited about that. Where I come from, when you're in my line of work, that's called a paper trail. I just got out of the federal penitentiary. I'm not going. The first rule of the business I'm in is you don't write anything down for any reason. I've already got, when I came to you folks, when I was sitting here at my first sessions, I sat in this room with warrants in 3 states. The IRS was looking for me, and nobody that loved or cared about me was talking to me, that's for sure. I did not take any Tylenol for a year with the state of my liver. They said it would shut my liver down. They said that I had to eat a certain way, my liver would repair itself. And I've already told you I'm a coward, so you know what I did? I took every Tylenol, everything in that cabinet I could take, and I just wanted to check out because I couldn't do what you folks did. So I thought. And what happened next, I don't have a great explanation for, other than this thing you folks taught me is God. Apparently what happened is I live in a crappy apartment, of course, because that's where drunks live. And when that shut me down, my body gave out. And when my body gave out, I fell into a refrigerator. The refrigerator thudded against the thin walls of that crappy apartment. And the lady next door, who I've since learned had a perfect attendance record at work for over 9 years, happened to be home sick on a Tuesday. And she heard that refrigerator hit the wall. It scared the daylights out of her. She ran around, she looked through the front door, and she saw feet. She called 911. I woke back up in AGH to go to PRMC Hospital in Salisbury. For the 4th time that year, I was hospitalized over alcohol. When I came to, I was in one of those paper sexy hospital gowns where your butt hangs out and things are beeping. And I couldn't even believe it, you know, that there's a place just beneath loser. And that's for the people to try to kill themselves, and it doesn't even work. Can't even do that right. Couldn't even kill myself right. That feels good. But it was just what it took, because as my eyes cleared and I opened up, y'all know who was at the foot of that bed? Janine with the duckies. Now, I'm not sure if there's a place called Alcoholic Hell or not, but if there was, I was in it. And Janine did not speak to me that day, but she did talk to the duckies. Janine had tried to help me on many occasions. She looked at those girls and she said, "Girls, I want you to take a good look. This is what happens to an alcoholic that refuses to take our steps. Let's go, girls." And that was it. That was it. Something inside me snapped. When I started reading this book and I found out what Bill Wilson got in his hospital room, that bright light and that cool breeze that came through and through, and I got Janine and the Duckies, are you kidding me? I was hot, boy. But it turned out that it was every bit as internally and spiritually significant, because the next thought that went through my head, I've never had a thought like it before or since. And that thought was this: if I get through this alive, I'm going to find one of those old guys with that smile on their face and that book in their hand, and I'm going to do absolutely everything they tell me to do. That's my guy. That's my guy. He starts taking me through this thing and explaining to me what's going on and introduces me to Silkworth. I call him Silky. The guy's that much of a friend to me. He told me I got a body that can't handle booze, coupled with a mind that won't leave it alone. My mind always brings me back to that which is killing me, and what that looks like for me is when I take the first drink. The first drink asks for a second. The second demands a third. The third insists on the fourth. I want the fifth drink more than I ever wanted the first one. And that never, the book says, never, I repeat, happens in the average or temperate drinker. I know exactly what that meant. That's the phenomenon of craving, ladies and gentlemen. It says if you've ever experienced that, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. And worse than that, the solution would be simply to just not drink, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. Asked if I had any other allergies. I do. I'm allergic to dogs, cats, pollen, ragweed, strawberries, a whole bunch of things. I've had to get allergy shots as a kid. Strawberries, I eat a strawberry, I get red, blotchy spots. You got to hit me with an EpiPen. My throat will close and I will die. I learned that when I was 2 or 3 years old. I am happy to report I'm 42 years old. I haven't had a strawberry since. I'm not a member of Strawberries Anonymous. I don't have a strawberry sponsor. At dinner tonight, I was not counting Popeye's strawberries. I was not looking enviously across the room on vacation, thinking, I wonder if I could have strawberries on vacation. Can I have strawberries at different... What if I sliced them and put them on ice cream? Could I have them then? I don't have any thoughts like this about strawberries. Why is that? That's how this whole thing started. What makes me one of you is because of the effect produced by alcohol. It's what it does for me, not what it does to me. Strawberries just kill me. They don't do anything for me. Alcohol kills me slowly, one drink at a time, but gives me a little something on the front end that I'm desperately clinging to with this mental obsession of the good old days. That's good to know. That might be the most important thing I know about. He said, would you agree that you're powerless over alcohol, have less power than is required? Less power, power less. I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. Makes sense. Power less, less power. So what do you have less power? Can you think of any decision in your life? Just, any decision that you've made time and time and time again. Can you just think of one? You're like, yeah, that I'm never, ever, ever going to drink again. Then he said, how are you doing managing that decision? Not very good. Not very good. So that's what you're looking at. I'm a guy that's got less power than is required to manage my own best decision to never take another drink of alcohol. And that's going to require some power. And thank God that's what the next 11 steps are about. Alcoholics Anonymous is a Get Power program. It's not about powerless. You are not going to see me frumping through meetings. You will never hear the words out of my mouth or out of this book that says, I'm powerless over people, places, and things. That is not what this book tells me. It tells me that I have been given the power. It's not mine, but I channel that power much like a mirror and shine it out to that next sick and suffering alcoholic. It tells me I've been given the power to help where nobody else can. This is a Get Power program, and that's those next 11 steps. We did that inventory. It was apparent who the problem was. There was a whole lot of lists, and names and names and names, and there's only one guy over in that far right column that's got something to do with everything. You're looking at him. There was either like 70-some people who were wrong or the one common denominator, right? I'm not good at math, but I know what the lowest common denominator is, and you're looking at him. I've got something to do with every relationship in my life. We look at the assets, the defects, the shortcomings. If you're a semantic hair splitter, right? I'm still trying to figure out the difference of those shortcomings and defects. It's all the misguided gifts that God gave me that I errantly took into a different direction. And he said, we got up to that 8-step list. You know, he had it. I'd report back things I'd hear in the meetings, and thank God he always had a book. You know, I'd say, I was at the meeting this morning. Weren't we supposed to, on that, what do you mean 8-step? At the 4th step, weren't we, when we did that 5th step, we were supposed to go to the ocean. I heard him this morning at the meeting. When you do your 5th step, you do it at the ocean, and then you set it on fire, and you throw it into the ocean, and it's like a Viking funeral, man. It sounded fantastic. We never did any of that. Aren't we supposed to light things on fire and throw them into the ocean and be rid of them? He said, what are you doing? What meeting do you go to? Would you please stop going to BB meetings? And I said, what is BB? And he said, I don't know, but it is certainly not AA. And he took our meeting list and started circling the meetings I was allowed to go to. And he said, that 4th step, it holds the key to our future. The book shows us that is the 8-step list. We add some stuff to that. But no, you don't throw that 4th step away. That's everything. You know, and this is where we get our chance. He said, Alcoholics Anonymous is a theoretical program up to step 9. That's all it is. All you are up to step 9 is a self-informed jerk. Might have used a different word, but we're cleaning it up. All you are up to step 9 is a self-informed jerk. That's what he told me. Nobody out there in the world cares that you've made some peace with a God of your understanding in step 1, 2, 3. Good for you. Nobody out there in the world cares at all that you've written all this inventory and shared it with God and another human being. Good for you. Nobody cares that you know about your assets, defects, shortcomings. Good for you. And nobody certainly cares that you got a list of what you're going to make right. You've been going to make right your whole life. But the 9th step, kid, he said, 9th step, how free do you want to be? This is where maybe, just maybe, you get to rub the record clean. Maybe you get to die with both sides of that slate of life even. Maybe, just maybe, I get to die an even man. How free do you want to be? He told me we got all kinds of sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just look around. We got everything in here from ground beef to filet mignon. What do you want to settle for? How free do you want to be? He said, if I was you, I'd start dating my mother. Anywhere that lady will go with you, you take her out once a week. And I start dating my mom. I'm dating my mom. I'm dating my mom. And at the time, I'm sweeping the floor in a picture frame shop. I'm making $6.25 an hour. But a little becomes a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous. That little paycheck, anybody notice that? That little pay, I mean, the first thing we get in AA is a pay raise. When we focus on the spiritual, the material always takes care of itself. It's never the other way around. I'd had it backwards my whole life. That little paycheck, I started paying the IRS back. We went down to Baltimore. He says, you got to go make some payment arrangements. I owed $37,000. I'm supposed to pay $20 a week, they told me. I have no idea how you pay $37,000 off $20 a week. That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I had a plan for the IRS, so I was going to pay them $37,000 when I had $37,000. You know, and you all know the alcoholic plan. You know, when do we get $37,000? Never. And I'm dating my mom and dating my mom and dating my mom. And while I'm doing that, you know, some of these meetings I didn't used to like, I'm starting to like. Anybody had that? Those ones with the book and the steps, they're starting to get a lot better. Some of those people that I thought were a little bit weird with that crazy smile and look in their eye, they're starting to make some sense. You know, I'm starting to understand what they're saying when they say it. We were sitting at Carrabba's. My mom's eating spaghetti, twirling it around on a fork, man. And what I remember about that dinner, and I don't know how many we'd been to get to that place and how many years it was, but I know that her eyes came up from that plate of spaghetti, and she was looking at me eyeball to eyeball, and we were having a conversation, mother to son, the way things are supposed to be. My mother was able to look at me for the first time in a long time, and she asked if I'd come over her house every now and then to take trash out. She was getting into her 70s. She let me back in the house to take out trash, to change light bulbs, to do little things around the house, and I would show up. I'm embarrassed to tell you that when she's got one little light bulb that's in a kitchenette where she sits to eat and where she cooks, and when that light bulb goes out, you can't see to cook or eat. She used to ask me to come change that light bulb, and it would take me 2 to 3 weeks to sober up enough to go do that, and I'd leave that little lady in the dark. And I don't have to do that anymore because of you guys. I get to show up. Because of this deal, my wife and I have been able to purchase, well, I have a wife because of this deal. Let's start with that. and she's here. Many of you know Lauren. Lauren, stand up. I don't mean to embarrass you, but that's... So, that right amazing gift. I was just trying to explain to her the other night that it's very clear, you guys could probably see it as well, that God loves me a lot more than he loves her. And I was trying to tell her that while we were laying in bed, and she looks at me like, what is wrong with you? Why would you say something like that? What do you mean God loves you more than he loves me? And I said, well, think about it. He gave me you, and he only gave you me. And we were able to buy a home 1.7 miles from my mother so that we could look after her, take care of her as she gets old. We've made that commitment to be here for my mother into her old age. We have a new daughter. Her name's Isabella. Isabella's 14, 15 months old, coming up on 15 months here on the 28th. Isabella's an old Spanish name. Aside from being the name of the queen, it literally translates into God's precious gift. None of that would have happened, and my mom gets to come over almost daily to hang out. She's at the house right now hanging out with Isabella, putting her to bed, giving her little bath, and being a part of our lives. The last thing I want to say about my mom, for any of the tough guy gangster types that are still thinking that's what you are, I just wanted to be a tough guy my whole life. I just wanted to be a man. I wanted to be a man. And it turns out it's real hard to be a man if you first don't learn how to become a son. My little sister hadn't talked to me in a long time. I had a set of Baltimore Ravens season tickets. I don't know why I had them when I got to AA, and I had like all my clothes in a black hefty bag and Ravens season tickets. That's how we are when we get here. I mean, I do a lot of work over at Diakoni and stuff. I mean, they're just like me over at Diakoni. They don't have a home, they don't have a bank account, but they got an iPhone 6. I'm like, why do you have the iPhone 6? You know, like, our priorities are so out of whack when we get here. And I think the tickets might have been from like the last drug deal before sobriety or something. And he said, you don't even like going to the games anymore. You live down here now. It's 3 hours to the game. What you liked about the Ravens game was having the best tailgate party in the parking lot, you know, slicing a prime rib, having the best bar. He said, by the time you went into the game, you were so drunk you never knew who won anyway. And he was right. That was, you know, my favorite part about going to the game. He said, send them to your sister. I said, these are expensive. Are you crazy? She hadn't talked to me in 6.5 years. He said, I didn't ask you. I'm telling you. I sent them to my sister, and nothing happened. He said, send the next set. I said, do you not listen? He said, send the next set. And I sent the next set, and you know what happened is the little girl's voice was on the other end of the phone going, Richie, 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 did you see that? They just threw the ball. The Ravens tied it up. The Ravens tied it up. They're in the end zone. I don't even know who they were playing, and there's nothing I could care about less than who was winning that game, boy. But I was on the phone with my little sister talking for the first time in 6.5 years, and it was a big, big deal. And we started developing a little relationship around football, and she bought her first house down in Federal Hill, which is like this overpriced little shoe boxes down there. And by this point, I'd gotten my big career promotion. I was vacuuming swimming pools. I was promoted from sweeping floors to swimming pools, and I loved it. You know, it turns out you do that from like 5 to 10 a.m. because people wake up before noon and like to swim. I did not know that. And I was making $500 a week, man. I couldn't even believe it. You know, and again, a little was a lot when you focus on the spiritual. The material always takes care of itself. And I'm paying back these amends, and the IRS is getting a little bit more. And I'll fast forward with that. 4 years later, the IRS got paid. We went to the main Ocean City post office. I put that last check in the mailbox. Roger drove from Bethany Beach to meet me there for the momentous occasion. We put the last check in that mailbox to the IRS. He said, say it to the mailbox. There's all these people around, you know. I'm like, I'm talking to a mailbox. I said, my amends to the IRS is complete. This little guy with a pacemaker in his heart came up over the top of that mailbox. He looked like Air Jordan, giving me this high five as that last check went in. And you know, I'll tell you what, those doctors, you know, might say that his heart's getting a little bit older and he's got a bad heart, but in my eyes, that's the biggest heart in Alcoholics Anonymous. And about a year later, I got a thing from the IRS, and when I opened it up, it had a check in it, and it was a sizable check, and I drove back up there, and I said, I'm in trouble, Raj, I screwed something up, I don't know what's going on. They sent me this, and he looked at it, and he said, that's a tax refund check, you idiot. Normal people get those every year. And I've been getting them every year. I'm vacuuming the pools, and on the weekends I'm tired. I don't ever have enough money for it. It's never convenient. I'm paying the IRS, but I'm driving to Federal Hill after work on Friday, helping my little sister to fix up that little house in Federal Hill, helping her paint the walls and put down a new floor, staying there for the weekend, driving back on Sunday, tired as a dog to go back to work on Monday. I never wanted to do it. It's never convenient. I never had enough money, and if I was waiting for it to be convenient or to have enough money to make that amend, it would have never happened. My little sister and I have developed one of the best relationships over the years. It got to the point where some years went by, and a guy I knew named Justin called me up and said, "Hey, Rich, I know your father's no longer with you guys, no longer part of your life, but you're the number one man in your little sister's life. I'm calling to ask you if I could have her hand in marriage." And I'm the last person, a drunk like me, to give away the hand of a beautiful little girl like that, and she called and asked if I'd walk her down the aisle. You know, I got to do that, a sober man of integrity, you know, head up, shoulders back, dressed like I'm dressed tonight, on time. All the stuff you guys taught me. It was one of the great events that would come to pass, you know, for me and countless others. I had old friend, Ethan, since we've been third grade. And Ethan asked me to be the best man in his wedding. His father sent me a plane ticket, had me fit it in custom tuxedo, purchased it. All I was to do was to get on the plane in San Diego when I was living out there taking over the world, one drug deal at a time. I was so excited to be his best man, I started drinking the night before I was to get on the plane to come back. Y'all know how that goes. I didn't make the wedding. Left him without a best man, no call, no show, story of my life. And when I do something like that, you go on a secret list that I keep in my guts. It's why alcoholics have caller ID. You got to look at it before you answer the phone, right? That's called bondage of self. Many of you ask your sponsor about that. I don't have time to get into it. If you need to look at caller ID before you answer your phone, you're hiding from somebody. And today I get to answer the phone. As many of you know that call me in this room, I say, "Hello, Rich Bruckner," because it doesn't matter who's on the other end of that phone. Doesn't matter. I don't know anybody a cent. Nobody's looking for me. The warrants are gone. And whenever Ethan would call, though, I couldn't answer it because I knew why he was calling. He was calling to tell me what a no-good drunken bum I was. You couldn't even show up for my wedding after my father did all that. You know, what a piece of crap friend you are. And then I'd heard about his wife was cute and wonderful, and I knew he'd told her what a piece of crap I was. And then I'd have, the years went by, that they had a child and another child, and they'd been telling the kids that. And when that phone would ring, my stomach would just get sick, you know, because that stuff matters to me sober. I don't like feeling like that sober. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, Eighth, I don't know if you've ever heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in this thing. We got this thing called the 9th Step where I got to try to clear up the wreckage of my past. I know that I was no kind of friend at that wedding. I need 5-10 minutes of your time with you and your father. I know you probably hate me, but this is a life or death deal, man. Can I just have like 10 minutes? He said, "Yeah, you could be here Saturday morning at 8 a.m. if you can make it." And that was like 9 years later, so I think he might have had one of those resentments. And I showed up early because that's what you guys taught me, and I had a pocket full of money from those swimming pools, and his dad's car was there, and I knocked on the door. Ethan answered the door. His wife was standing by a kitchen counter with the little girl standing next to her holding her hand, and his mother and father were in the back, and what I didn't see was this little boy, man, and he came running at me like a freight train from some back room, and he comes running at me, and he grabs a hold of my leg, and he looked up in my eyes, and he said, "You're my Uncle Rich? Daddy said one day I'd get to meet you." In that instant, I had an inward knowing, an experience. Much like Bill. Bill says he saw, he felt, he believed. Y'all didn't sell me anything. You didn't tell me about your God. You didn't convince me anything. In that instant, with that little boy holding my leg, looking up into my eyes, the scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. And in that instant, I realized that my pride, my stupid ego is what separates me from you. My inability to admit my wrongs, my inability to get those words out that I was wrong, I need to fix this. It separates me from you. And if I'm separate from you, I'm separate from God. It's just that way. And you could have never convinced me of that in a million years. And after I made my amends with Eighth, I sat down with his father in the other room. And I made my son, I think I owe you some money for the tuxedo and this and that. And he said, "Yeah, you owe me $1,372. And I didn't see that coming either, but I had it in my pocket and I went to pull it out. And he said, whoa, 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 if you're really a part of this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, you really have a home group and all that's true. What you're going to do is no more than $10 at a time. You're going to take some donuts or cookies to your home group, treat them to some nice coffee every now and then, save the receipt. None of them can be for more than $10. Put gas in a newcomer's car so they can get to the next meeting. Don't give them the money. Put the gas in the car so they can get there. Right? No more than $10. When you have $1,372 worth of receipts, you drive them back here to Baltimore and give them to me. On that day, your amends to me will be complete. By the way, I'm sober in Alcoholics Anonymous 28 years, and I've been praying for the two of you since you've been that big. I didn't see that coming. The guys on this stage could tell you that my home group ate Stouffer's lasagna for the better part of 2 years. They're $9.95. I start baking them at 375 degrees 2 hours before the meeting. And you know what that amend did for me? It made me think about you 2 hours before I got to the meeting. I was already thinking about you, going to that grocery store, getting that lasagna, cooking it, cutting it, bringing the plates. I was already in Alcoholics Anonymous before I got to the meeting and learning to care and think about others. My last amend, I had an old warrant out in San Diego. It was my last one. I owed them 5 years of my life on a DUI. I had some outside issues in my pocket, and the judge put me on probation. He said, if you complete this probation, it'll be as if this arrest never occurred. It's called the PC 1000 First Time Offenders Felony Diversion Program in California. They still have the program. And I told that judge what I'd tell every judge. I said, you bet, Your Honor, I'll be your model guy. And I thought I would. I had no idea that alcohol calls the shots, not me. And when that turned into a warrant, I fled, because that's what I do. And he said, this is a good time to go turn yourself in and do that 5 years. I said, what are you talking about, you know? And matter of fact, by this point in my sobriety, you know, things are looking pretty good. And I'm telling him, I'm like, I got my mom needs me. I'm good with my little sister. You know, I'm changing the light bulbs at mom's house. That's important. The home group needs me. I got you guys threw in the complimentary AA girlfriend by that point. Not the woman I'm married to now, but a wonderful lady that I was dating at the time. And, you know, I'm telling him all these reasons that I should not be going to prison for 5 years. And he said, let me help you see this. You guys, you just see this a little bit wrong. Sponsors are good like this because they see things different. He said, this career you think you have that you're giving it, you vacuum swimming pools. Just about anybody could do that. They'll be fine. Your mother, all she's ever wanted you to do is the right thing. Why don't you talk to your mother and see what she would have you do? And I talked to my mother, and all she ever wanted me to do was to do the right thing. He said, this woman that you're dating, she's 18 years sober. She's got a God and a sponsor of her own. She was far better before you came along anyway. And this house that you think you have, it's not a house, it's a trailer. And you don't own it, you rent it. They just see things weird. And him and a lot of the guys, a couple of guys in this very room, loaded me into a car and took me to the airport and put me on a plane to go do that 5 years. And I'd love to tell you I wasn't scared to death, but I wanted to be free, man. I wanted to be free. How free do you want to be? And I walked in front of that judge. I'd been sick that morning several times in the bathroom. Any of this stuff about faith and fear can't be in the same place at the same time. I don't know about that. I was scared to death, and I had the faith that we were going to make it through it okay. And I stood in front of that judge. He said, what do you have to say for yourself? And I said, I'm here to do 9-step Alcoholics Anonymous. I would like to do the 5 years because I don't ever want to drink again. I told you I'd do something, and I didn't. What I did not know is that 47 of you took the time to write that judge letters telling him what my life looked like, what I was doing in Alcoholics Anonymous, the guys that I was sponsoring, who I was working with, and what my life looked like. And the judge looks at all of that, and he said, that's not what these people have to say about you. I ordered you to 10 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous as a part of probation. They say you've been to over 1,000. Although you did not complete this probation the way that I told you to do it, you have exceeded its requirements. If I was you, I would go back to Maryland and do whatever those people in AA tell you to do. This case is dismissed. I've never had a case dismissed. I've been arrested 36 times and I've gone to jail 36 times. I walked out of that courtroom and my God got a whole lot bigger through the experience. I saw, I felt, I believed in that order. I called Roger. I said, I had a big book study at the time in my living room on Wednesdays. I said, tell the guys I'm coming home. I'm coming home. You know, we don't have to move the big book study. I'm coming. He said, well, wait a second. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You got to buy a plane ticket home for tomorrow, right? I said, yeah. And he said, well, why don't you go by that college? You remember those Jesuits that kicked you out of that college? While you're out there, why don't you straighten that out? And I'm thinking like, geez Louise, can we celebrate for a moment? And I keep that one-way plane ticket from San Diego home in the front of my book. I always have, because I didn't think I was coming home that day. And going over to that school seemed like small potatoes compared to doing that 5 years, and I drove over there and I talked to the dean. Of course, it was the same dean from all those years earlier. I said, I don't know if you remember me. My name's Rich Bruckner. I used to be a student here, and I was kicked out. She said, Rich, we remember you. We've only had one student go to the federal penitentiary. And I said, I'm in this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. I go through my amends. I said, I know what I did to this university. I brought a lot of shame to the university and to the Jesuits. When I was here, I didn't know what they stood for, but I do now. You stand for building men and women of integrity, of education, and of doing the right thing, and I didn't stand for any of that. And I have no idea how to make this right with your institution, but I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And she said, if that's true, come with me. She walked me into a building next door, put down a big stack of papers, said, this is an application to our law school. What you're going to do is you're going to fill this out. You're going to go to our law school. You're going to go on to graduate and do good things that make us proud. That's how you're going to fix this. We like to graduate students. That's what makes us look good, having a high graduation rate. We don't really like kicking students out, Rich. I don't know if you know that. I didn't know that. And I stepped outside, I called Roger, I said, this lady's lost her mind, the dean wants me to go to the law school, I barely got through college, I'm a federal felon, even if I get through law school, they'll never let me take the bar exam, if I take the bar exam, they'll never let me through the ethics committee will never let me practice. But he said, hey, shut up. Did you just tell that lady you'd do whatever she said to make it right? And I said, yes, I did. He said, shut up and fill out the papers. 3 years later, I graduated second from the top in my class, not because I'm smart, but because I did law school the AA way. The way you taught me to live my life. I showed up 15 minutes early for every class, shook every teacher's hand until they knew my name personally, and stayed after class, just like we do with the newcomer, and I asked a question whether I had one or not, just to build the relationship. When I got back, I got through that committee. I wasn't out of law school and through the bar, and I did have to go in front of the ethics committee, and I don't have time to get in front of that, but it was funny. And the phone rings, and on the other side of that phone was a guy that said he was the state's attorney for the state of Maryland, and he had the governor on the other line, that they got this big federal grant, and he'd been given my name. What they wanted to do was they wanted to hire an assistant state's attorney for the state to head up a narcotics and gang prosecution unit, and they said that they'd been given my name, that I might know something about the importation of narcotics. And while my knees buckled, what I thought about was the fact of what all you old guys with that book in your hand and that smile on your face promised me. You said, one day, kid, your sordid past will become your greatest asset. And that's exactly what has happened. When I stand at that table in the morning, it was tough at first, because I told you I don't do well with judges. They try to trick you. They say things each morning like, will the defendant please rise? And I'd stand up at first, and the judge would be like, not you. And it took a little bit to get used to, and I'm just used to being the defendant. It's been the better part of 8 years that I get to go in there, and there's no separation in my life anymore because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't have anything called my work life, my marriage life, my home life. It's all one thing. What a tremendous gift. And every day I get to say two amazing things. Each morning I walk into a courtroom and I stand up and I say, good morning, Your Honor. Rich Bruckner for the state of Maryland. And every night I get to say the way more important thing. I get to come hang out with you folks and say that my name's Rich Bruckner. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for my life. That's all I got.